Alex Marlow here, editor-in-chief of Breitbart News, SiriusXM Patriot 125. Dr. James Lindsay is with me. You are a very popular person on the internet, and well-deserved, because you've got one, as Dennis Prager says, the rarest of gifts, which is bravery. You stand up to a lot of people all the time. People don't like your persona, which is you're a person of science, of math specifically.
Yeah.
You're not a right-winger, and yet you have built your brand on explaining how horrible the left has become, which we love watching from afar. But this is an amazing thing, to go from someone who's not a right-winger, now you're at Student Action Summit, Turning Point USA event. Pretty incredible.
Yeah, well, it's been quite the journey the last, I don't know, 2 years, 3 years, trying to speak up about this, as you said. I don't know about bravery. I mean, I just feel like I have to tell the truth, right? You just have to say what you have to say.
But that's a brave thing these days.
And yeah, so I half my left-leaning friends don't talk to me anymore. You get through that.
But that's something. That's not a significant. That's a significant sacrifice.
I have to tell people the truth about what's going on. And like you said, the left is freaking out or something. It's out of control. It's taken up with critical race theory and so on. And it's really putting us in a dangerous place. And when people understand what these ideologies are, they'll start to realize how dangerous it is.
So this is where you've kind of honed in on in particular, which is critical race theory. Does it have a clear definition? Because I'll tell you, I think if you ask Ibram Kendi, I don't know if he's got a definition for it, but he gets credited for it, whatever. But does it have a definition? How big of a threat is it? Because I feel like half of the left is telling us it's a hoax by folks like you and me, and half are telling us it's the most essential thing we've ever tried to implement in American society.
Okay, so the first thing you have to realize is when they tell you opposite things to try to divert away from something, they say, no, you're wrong, and it points in opposite directions, that means you're straight over the target.
Yeah.
And so, yes, it does have a definition. No, they don't fully agree on that definition, so it's better if we kind of give one from the outside. The simplest definition of critical race theory is, it is the belief that systemic racism was created by white people to be the fundamental organizing principle of society. In other words, they think about, and this is a big jump from what I just said, but it's true, they think about race the same way, and racism the same way that the Marxists thought about capitalism. It's the fundamental superstructure that organizes all of society. And everything has to be thought about in those terms. Everything has to be thought about in terms of the power dynamics generated by race and racism, just the same way that Marx thought about the power dynamics created by the bourgeoisie and capitalism. And you have to think of it that way. White people become, or whiteness becomes the mark of the bourgeoisie. It's exactly the same ideology. So when you ask how dangerous is it, well, look at what's happening in Cuba right now. I mean, there's protests outside here right now about how bad communism is and how it causes states to collapse and they drain all the resources and destroy it. I'm actually to the point now where I would say that where Marx was looking to build a dictator of the proletariat to march us through socialism as a transitional stage to communism, critical race theory is trying to build a dictatorship of the anti-racists to march us through a racial socialism into a equity phase that's a racial communism. And I say that, you mentioned Kendi. Kendi wants to build a department of anti-racism that's above the branches of government, backed by a constitutional amendment that gives it absolute authority. Dictatorship of the anti-racists. That's what the goal of critical race theory is.
Is that compatible with American values in our founding documents?
No. All men are created equal is in direct opposition to that. In fact, for the people who really know what's going on, and this is philosophically deep, I know, it's put in dialectical opposition to the founding documents of the United States in order to try to transform them into something completely different and I say dialectical, and again, I go back to Marx in the dialectical materialism sense, but this is dialectical racial structuralism if we get into their literature, and they talk about it in exactly the parallel language, exactly the same kind of stuff.
Yeah, this is what is so clear to me, but it seems like it's being indulged, if not outwardly embraced, by the mainstream left in the United States at this time.
It's been completely taken up by them. I don't know how many of them are, they subscribe to it and they believe it, how many of them just are too afraid to challenge it, how many of them don't really know what it is or going along with it, and kind of how many of them are just absolutely cowed to the point where if they don't go along with this, they know it's over for them. And it's not a good place. Like I said, I lost half of my friends on the left just by speaking up about it.
So you're in academia?
Not anymore, no.
Not anymore. Since when?
I left academia in 2010.
2010. So you were a math professor.
I was.
And so describe me the trajectory of someone who makes his living with numbers and then now you're like a cultural influencer in a way.
Right.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's a weird story and it's a long story, but the short version is way back in the early part of the 2010s, I got involved in the New Atheism movement. And the New Atheism movement picked up the woke stuff much earlier than most of the other parts of the culture, and it wrecked it. By 2011, they had a huge kind of Me Too flavored incident. By 2015, the movement basically didn't exist anymore except in this remnant shell that had been hollowed out. And we watched that happen, my colleagues and I. So in 2016 and 17, we had this idea, like, maybe it comes down to their academic literature. Maybe this is coming out of the universities. Let's write hoax papers.
Right.
And so we did the Grievance Studies Affair through 2017 and 18. And when we were doing it, I was talking with somebody about this last night. I was like, it was like, we're out in the backyard, we've got that tarp over this thing, and we're like, it's like under the tarp, and it's like, whoa, dead bodies, and it's like, that's what we found. And then as we dug more and started to realize what this literature is, critical race theory, gender studies, queer theory, etc., it was like, wow, it's not dead bodies, it's a mass grave. Now that I'm connecting it to communism, it's a mass grave. And that's, of course, a metaphor. That's just how bad the literature is. It's killing science, it's killed the humanities, it's taken over social science. It was like, this is a catastrophe. So in the middle of that project, I realized I have to devote all of my time to this now. Yes. So the logical, thought processes of math are great for analyzing and finding where it's, thinking the wrong way, where things are inconsistent, but I've switched completely into studying these ideologies and trying to educate the public on them.
I want to make sure that you can share with the audience where people can find you online. You're at Conceptual James on Twitter, we know that. But where your books, websites, where can people go to keep up with you?
My most recent book is Cynical Theories, and so you can pick that up. It actually details the postmodern aspect, the postmodern philosophy aspect of this critical race theory and the critical social justice ideology. And I run a website called New Discourses that keeps, of course, a book is static. It's much more up to date, new information coming out all the time, podcasts, articles, videos, etc.
So newdiscourses.com for the website.
Newdiscourses.com.
Okay, so let's get into the gender theory, because this is one where you've also been really good on your Twitter about this. This does feel like we're really losing our minds on this. And we're running in the wrong direction. And I say this as someone I kind of try to embrace traditional masculine characteristics for the most part. It's worked very well for me. My wife is pretty feminine. It's worked well for her. And yet we're telling people that not only should you not go in that direction, you should go towards gender is a construct. It doesn't matter. It's not scientific at all. I feel like this is going to backfire. I don't know when, but you've thought about this much more deeply than I have. What does our audience need to know?
So that's a good summary. It's already backfiring. We are already entering into a phase where young people are being groomed by their parents, by their teachers in schools, by these weird, I don't even want to know what I can say on camera, where somebody dressed up in a rainbow monkey suit with whatever.
No, it's Breitbart, so you can go. You can go.
Bare butt and the whole sex toy hanging off the front. And we're already seeing the damage.
At the library, by the way.
At the library.
That wasn't just, that wasn't in
front of children.
There wasn't at the Embarcadero in San Francisco. That was
right. And so what we're actually seeing, though, is this grooming of young people into the inability to process their gender identity, their sex identity, their sexual identity as they're going through puberty, which is already a difficult and complicated time for that. Their bodies are rapidly changing. They grew up thinking, in reality, we are transitioning from boys and girls to men and women.
Yes.
In that period. And that's a tumultuous and challenging part. Sexuality is waking up. You go from a asexual child to a sexual adult. Lots of complicated changes are happening. It's already backfiring because we are grooming children en masse with state endorsement into not knowing how to navigate that difficult period in their lives and to not be able to figure out, we're grooming them into identity crises that they are then trying to solve through these medical means like transition or by adopting a very radical identity, like non-binary or gender fluid or xenogender in the kind of more extreme examples where they can be some gender that's not even a real gender, like tree or boat or something. For real, this is a thing that's happening. It's happening.
So, but what's the goal? And what do they want to accomplish? Is it just pure chaos? Is that the goal, or is there something more specific than that?
That's... If we're going to be cynical about it, and one thing that I've learned in the past few years is that however cynical I already am, being more cynical usually gets me closer to the right answer of what's really happening. If we're going to be cynical about it, yes, chaos, absolute chaos, a bunch of people who have identity issues that are developing personality disorders through their formative years, or they're going to be very moldable into these kind of critical theories, which are kind of an expression of, like an academic expression of personality disorder in print. From their perspective, to be charitable, they're trying to free up. So we can think of when we were growing up, it was like, oh, the gay dad, or the dad throws the gay kid out, kicks him out of the house. They're overreacting to that to be very charitable. And so, no, we're going to be completely open, completely accepting, not even just accepting, but affirming and celebratory of whatever this identity struggling child is going through.
No, it's the celebration. That's the free. It's not the acceptance. We're comfortable. I mean, people my age and younger, even right-wingers, were very accepting of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Why are we celebrating it? Why are we acting like it's preferential?
Yeah, well, the answer is because in their gender theory, critical gender theory or queer theory, they are actually trying to take everything that exists in reality and invert it, turn it upside down. And so what they want to do is, men and women who are mostly straight, who are mostly identifying as masculine, feminine, according to their sex, well, that's creating a power structure. That's what they think, just by the fact of it. And so now, if you're a gay kid, you're expected, you grow up and 97% of your friends are straight, and now you have to figure out, well, who am I? How is it?
Yeah.
And that's hard. And so we want to make it not hard for anybody, is what, if we're going to be, again, charitable, that's their goal, is it's not going to be hard for anybody. But the tragedy is it's making it hard for everybody.
Okay.
It's not making it easier except for the very small percentage of these kids. It's making it more difficult because now there are more challenges, more choices, more nonsense just baked in, and everybody's got to kind of constantly change and keep up, and they have to think about it all the time, constantly focus on it. So it's not helping anybody. And then for everybody else who's not within that, small fraction, it's forcing them to have to doubt themselves and consider themselves differently. And that's really the goal, is to doubt that so-called cis heteronormative power structure, or actually reality, and then the kind of soft normative power that comes with that, to try to abolish that, which is going to completely unmoor us from who we are biologically and as human beings.
And then what? What's next if they achieve that?
I mean, I'm telling you, what they're grooming is people who are not able to cope with reality as it is, and so therefore are going to be required to cope with reality through external constructs, whether it's a state, whether it's a medical apparatus, whatever it happens to be. It's to create complete dependency on the people who are giving the authority of the ideology in the name of total freedom.
Unbelievable. So frightening, and it's here, it's happening. We cannot wait in terms of pushing back, but how do you push back? What is other than being vocal online?
Well, that is the starting place, though.
Yeah.
And online is hard.
It's really hard.
It's really hard because they'll ban you. I mean, the trans activists are very, very good at policing Twitter and getting people who say the wrong things.
Yeah, we've been watching what's happening with Abigail Schreier's book. The book is not a radical book at all, and it's being treated like it's the most radical text that's ever existed.
That's right, but it's totally sane and normal.
Yeah.
But that's where it starts, is it's speaking, and it's not even necessarily speaking up online, though that's great and important, and people should be doing it. It's actually speaking to one another.
Yeah.
And saying, you know what?
Amen.
Me and you are just having a conversation. There's no camera, and it's just, you know what? I don't know about all that. Somebody, a friend of mine, a young woman that I know through one of my kids, was talking to me recently, and she said, I'm going to confide something to you. And I was like, what is it? She's like, I'm the most trans, gay, accepting person you can imagine, but I'm not doing those neo pronouns, Z's or her. She was like, that's it. I'm not going that far. And then I was like, me either. And then she said, it feels so good that I could tell somebody that.
Right.
Those conversations are going to move the needle miles.
Yeah, no, I believe you, and I think it really does start at that hyper-local level, just in your personal life, in your own community. Again, Dr. James Lindsay is with me. Your narrative is still so fascinating to me. Do you still identify as an atheist?
Yes.
Do you identify as a liberal?
No.
Do you identify as conservative?
No.
So this is what's very cool. You're at a conservative event with conservative students, most of them God-fearing Judeo-Christians, and you're here, and you've been here, this is your second one.
Yeah.
First of all, tell me about what you want to say to this specific audience. And second of all, do you feel comfortable here? Because I bet you do.
I do feel comfortable, yeah, for sure.
I bet you feel very comfortable.
Yeah, I'm very welcomed, as a matter of fact. It's really an interesting phenomenon.
Yes.
The left is trying to build this whole world-changing movement while they push everybody away.
Yes.
And while the other side is like, no, it's great, come on in. It's the most backward social dynamics ever if you want to take over the world, I guess. But it's a very welcoming environment. What do I want this kind of an audience to get? I mean, they're mostly young people. This is a Student Action Summit. I want them to realize that kind of confession that I just told you about, that's okay. That's important. And then starting to roots in those values that not necessarily, they don't have to be trad values,
Yeah.
as they say, but values of, no, normal is a thing that can exist, and that's okay. And we should believe in things like truth. We should be looking for common ground. Like, it doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter who you are. Truth is truth is truth is truth.
Right.
It gives us common ground. The founding fathers of the United States understood that very clearly coming out of the Scottish Enlightenment. Truth is common ground. Rule of law is common ground. So we're looking now for what, I wouldn't just say what I want to tell them is not just common ground, but common sensibility.
Sure.
Right? Thomas Paine wrote Common Sense. I want to tell people about common sensibility. We have a shared view of the world, and it's okay to do that. You don't have to fragment it into, oh, you're this identity, so XYZ, and I'm that identity, so, PQR. It's not like that. We have a common sensibility that we can share, whether that's as humans, universal humanity under liberalism, or as Americans. Right. Or, I guess, as Floridians, or whatever state, if you want to get more local, or city, communities within cities and so on. But we have a common sensibility, and that's the way we need to start thinking about the world.
You have a very powerful message, and you're a powerful messenger to deliver it. One thing that you do, and I think this will be the last thing for today, is a lot of your content is, I think, designed for young men in particular, a group that seems more and more disenfranchised, and no one is speaking directly to them. But I'm seeing something really cool pop up online. There does seem to be a few pretty strong voices who are willing to go and risk cancellation, to use the cliched word that's so necessary, unfortunately. What is your message to younger men these days? Because I think you would agree with me that they're kind of not being spoken to on a societal level in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's do something with your life. Like, I practice a martial art. This is my hobby.
Yeah.
And there's this guy who came one time, just to tell a real quick story, and
Sure.
he was flopping around. He wasn't serious. It was no good. And my teacher got all mad at him and was like, you have to do this exercise. He gave you 3 exercises. He said, you leave now, you go do that for 3 years and get competent and come back and maybe I'll teach you.
Wow.
And so people at this age group, they need to understand, the young men need to understand, you need to go build something out of your life. You need to be, I don't want to put anybody down, but you're not worthy. The left is saying you're worthy automatically. You're not worthy automatically. You're worthy in what you do with your life. So go do something. Whether you get in the gym and get fit, that's great. Whether it's that you go learn something, a foreign language, a skill, something, and master it, like actually get good at it, and then try to go get something for yourself and clean your room or whatever, and then try to bring that into the world in a productive way.
I feel like we're getting too soft, and I always make fun of the Netflix and the DoorDash being a part of it, that it's just too yummy to sit on your couch, and then people, did you see that they're now making a robot that will literally bring the food to your face? Because it's not enough to bring
I saw refrigerators that you can summon with a remote or something.
They got
your
those.
phone.
So it's not a good thing.
It's like WALL-E. It's like that movie.
It's a very bad thing if this is happening, and we have to. It will take effort and it will take grit to fight through this, but we're not going to have it if no one tells people, no one with authority who are respected to come out and say, you do need to put time in on important stuff, both spiritually, physically, in terms of accomplishment, or else you're going to be lost when you get your mid-20s. And most people are lost in their mid-20s anyway. So
that's right.
You got to do that stuff just to have a chance.
Yeah, people need to understand. Young people need to understand. Self-esteem is something you earn.
Yeah.
You should have it. You should get it.
Yes.
But you have to earn it. You have to work your way there, and it's hard, and it's worth it. It's like if you don't do it that way, when you think you've arrived, you realize it's empty and it's false, and you break. But if you earn it, you know it's there, you know it's real, and then you have a platform from which inside yourself to speak from, whether it's spiritual, physical, mental, emotional, professional.
Hopefully all the above.
All of them.